Well, morning everybody, great to be here and thanks for the opportunity to give our point of view. Our contribution was a bit of a double act. My co-author Leanne Cutts is an Australian who works for our business, actually based in Tokyo at present, and you might be able to hear I'm a Brit. So it was quite interesting to exchange views on Australia's potential sources of competitiveness in an international business like ours. But of course our contribution was perhaps a bit narrower than some of the other economic and political contributors to the EPO, because really we are focused on the very practical challenge of sustaining a scale local manufacturing business here in Australia, and also continuing to grow some of the iconic brands that we already mentioned. But that's not to say that we're immune from some of the themes that really come through in the EPO. Clearly we see the opportunity, but also feel the responsibility for manufacturers like us to pick up the slack as the economy transitions from the mining boom. And we also feel the impact of Australia's exposure to global headwinds. And we would certainly concur that we feel that the overwhelming sentiment last year around the economic and indeed broader business outlook was pretty gloomy. And you can see here Accenture's analysis of sentiment in the newspapers in the middle of last year really demonstrates that. And certainly from our perspective, that does make it a bit harder to convince our international business that Australia is a great place to invest and do business. And it also can be a little energy sapping when you're trying to motivate your local team to believe in a positive vision for the future. And sadly, I think, as we've already reflected, if we look at this year, I would say despite a brief honeymoon, where we seem to get a little bit more cheerful for a period of time, actually we do seem to have plunged back into a rather pessimistic view of the world right now, which I think makes my next slide a little bit jarring, because we do have challenges, and I will come on and talk about them, but actually fundamentally our business is in the midst of a very big global and local transformation that has caused us to need to make some really tough choices locally and further afield about the structure of our business and how to sustain it. But fundamentally, we have great underlying momentum here. And we feel really good about the prospects for this year and beyond. Now, there is an element of optimism in our DNA. These brands that we have the privilege to look after are actually in the end all about putting smiles on people's faces. So to that extent, we do tend to see the world as a glass half full. But, as I said, we do have some considerable challenges in our local operation. And you can see here, we have 6 manufacturing plants here in Australia. We employ about 2,500 people. And as I said before, we're really not immune to the global headwinds, but we also are operating, let's face it, in a really high-cost manufacturing environment. And so people running our business globally would be somewhat remiss if they were not looking at our business here and wondering why it is that they should continue to be paying conversion costs, so the cost of converting our raw materials into the brands that we sell, that can be up to twice as much as those conversion costs from comparable, most efficient plants in Europe or in Asia. And so really, that was the start point of our journey about 2.5, 3 years ago, as we started to think about how we could get our business here to a position of sustainable growth and success into the future. And really, we thought about how we would go about that by leveraging our local sources of advantage. Now, I hesitate slightly to put this up as the first slide to talk about Australian advantage, because it does feel a little bit as if innovation has become a little bit of a fashionable panacea for a wealth of woes. And certainly, if you've been following the US election campaign, we hear a lot from Hillary Clinton about the amazing innovation culture that she has already established at the State Department. We've seen Marco Rubio come out and, in fact, 33 times in his book last year refer to innovation as the way forward. And here, domestically, of course, big focus on innovation as a way forward for industry and for the country more generally. We heard that from the Minister this morning. And indeed, you will have seen, you may well have seen, the advertising campaign that goes along with the economy of ideas that she referred to. And certainly that is very rousing. And we see a lot of scientists drawing on windows and playing with lasers. And I've tried to replicate that with our own exciting innovation photos here from our Innovation Centre in Ringwood. But I suppose my message is that certainly for businesses like ours, innovation is an incredibly important capability if we're to take the business forward. And we really recognise that, and 3 years ago decided to double down on innovation. It's a capability that we obviously have in our business day to day, because we need to continually bring new brands to market and new products to market to continue to excite our consumers. But actually what we decided to do was really operationalise innovation. So take it out of just the marketing and product research teams and actually drive that into our wider business as a means of becoming more efficient and effective, as well as stimulating growth. And in the last 3 years, what we've been able to do is really see the benefits of that wider approach and leverage of innovation. So our Innovation Centre here in Victoria, which was created and founded with support from the Victorian Government, has to date helped to teach over 200 small and medium-sized businesses here about innovation. It's enabled over 400 to collaborate together in the innovation space. But importantly for us, it's also enabled us to really embed innovation in the culture of our business. And what that's meant is that we've been able to bring innovative ideas to actually drive productivity. And we've got to a square now where over 4% net productivity a year is being delivered as a result of the innovation ideas that we're able to bring to the way we're running the core manufacturing business. So one example would be we've actually changed the way we deposit chocolate. Quite a small innovation actually, but it's delivered over 12% better output and 18% waste reduction on that line. Now, that's not a sexy picture up here, but actually that's really fundamentally improving our P&L. Similarly, we're proud to be collaborating right now with the Australian Border Force in being a pilot organisation for the Trusted Tender Scheme, which is actually revolutionising the way that imports and exports are managed through our ports. And that's going to bring huge industry benefits, as well as benefits to us locally. And in the growth space, we have really doubled down on the innovation that we're bringing to market. So we're now up to about 10% of our net revenue coming from new products, and you will have seen several of those come to market last year, including the somewhat infamous Cadbury Dairy Milk Vegemite, which I hope some of you tried. Sadly, I don't have any samples for those of you who didn't partake, because actually it's sold out. But little advert, we do have some products available for you afterwards, which is another of our innovations for last year, Cadbury Cocoa. But really innovation at the core of our business, really driving now both growth and productivity savings. Now, of course, you can't have a great innovation culture across your business unless you have a fantastic base level of capability. And here, I suppose that I really wanted to reflect on what I think is a big advantage for both Australia and Victoria, which I think sometimes we really underplay. The fact is that our Australian business is seen as a global talent developer and incubator for our business. At the moment, almost 30% of the regional leadership team is composed of Australians. The vast majority of those actually come from Victoria. And we're constantly exporting people to our wider organisation. Now, I won't say that that doesn't cause me some problems. Actually, this very week, I have farewelled my wonderful FD, who's gone off to bigger and greater things in the global organisation. But the point is, we have a fantastic capability here to draw from a very well-educated, ambitious and driven workforce, and actually use that talent pool then to develop capability to both win locally here, but also to export that talent. And that is further enhanced in Victoria by the fact that we have such a fantastic presence of really higher educational institutions. And then what we're also able to do is fill any skill gaps or experience gaps that we may have by being able to attract international talent. And certainly that has been very helpful to us, and we're able to attract that talent to come to us here in Australia because of the reputation that Australia has as being an open and accepting culture, and also because, of course, of our wonderful livability benefits. And I think 5th year in a row that Melbourne's just been voted the most livable city in the world. And that really is extremely helpful to us in attracting talent and then being able to develop them and potentially move them on to the wider organisation. So, thinking about Australian advantages overall, this is a slide that I borrowed from that Australian innovation campaign. And I really couldn't get away from the scientists' wonderful lasers and goggles, so I put it up here to close my presentation. But I probably should actually have picked the female scientist writing on the window, because I think one of the areas that we all need to do a bit better is in the area of making sure that we have a really balanced workforce. And I would point to the fact that we still have some imbalances, particularly in manufacturing. And just as one example, I do believe that at the last count, only about 16% of engineering graduates were women. And if we're really in industry going to be able to invest in high technology, invest in innovation, invest in driving growth into the future, we need to be able to draw from the total talent pool out there. And so we do need to encourage more women into some of these sectors. But thinking overall about our Australian advantages, I guess for us in my business, what we've been able to do in the last 3 years is really leverage those Australian sources of advantage, particularly in innovation, in capability and in diversity, to allow us to both grow locally, but also establish a reputation for ourselves in our wider business as a business unit that is innovating and is delivering. And that's meaning, ironically, that not only are we actually now growing locally, but we're also starting to win back some export volume from overseas. And this is something that, to be honest, we didn't actually set out to do 3 years ago. But our Ringwood plant here in Victoria has recently won over 700 tonnes of time-out volume to be produced for the Middle East. And we're looking at some further opportunities. And that, on the back of over $40 million of capital investment now coming to us every year, is really setting us up for sustainable growth into the future. Of course, there's many things that we've done to deliver that outcome. But really what's brought it all together for us has been leveraging those local sources of advantage, particularly the innovation capability, the broader talent pool that we have here, and the diverse and inclusive society in which we live. Now, I'm sure that I'm going to continue to be a little bit at odds with public sentiment on what the outlook is, because I feel fundamentally very optimistic about the future of our own business and, by extension, the possibilities and opportunities for Australian business more broadly. But my point of view is that the cost of doing business in Australia is not going to change anytime soon, and neither are some of those global headwinds that we face. So something else has to. And I really do believe that we need a new and more positive narrative of reform, of competition, and of growth-fueled development. And I think we're seeing both the Victorian government and the federal government taking good steps towards that, particularly in areas of focus around innovation and education. But I also believe that business need to come to the table here. So what I want to do in closing is to ask my fellow business leaders to join us in really focusing on what sets us apart and the advantages that come from that, rather more than focusing on the challenges that we face, and to commit to and articulate a bold vision for Australian-fueled growth and international competitiveness, because I certainly believe that we have many reasons to be cheerful. Thank you.